Okay, so I'm back. And let me fill with this, sorry. Okay, so I'm back. And still going through the race section because we're barely started, but next one alphabetically is Elf. And the thing you have to know about elves and me is that I'm a recovering elf racist, anti-elfist, anti-elfite. Um, no good reason. I mean, it's weird to say, oh yeah, like I could say they're cliche, and yeah, they are, and this is all about embracing cliche a bit. No, it's literally just I had players who were a little too keen on elves. Lord of the Rings had just come out. It was a whole thing. It was a whole deal, is what happened there. So, yeah, anti-elfist. And how do you own elves, but better in your D&D game? And I think, okay, so they've done a better job of tying elves, that Fey ancestry thing, into more of the elf backstory. And I think that's where we start, is we start with this idea that the Fey were their gods. That, the classic Celtic, named Fey, those were their gods. They were not just their gods, but their ancestors, right? They're the primogenitors of the elf race are Oberon and Titania and Queen Mab and all of them. And we start there. And we say that whatever made Lolth happen and the Drow happen was bad. Like, apocalyptically bad. Like, so we start there. 10,000 years ago, everything was awesome, as the elf history says. According to elf history, everything was awesome, and elves ruled the land, and magic was amazing, and there was fey shit all over the place. And at the end of it, one of the elf deities, a woman, definitely a woman, is, rebelled. And no one says why, no one even says who she was before, but now she's Loth, and her followers are black and live underground now. And the elf histories say that don't go into the why, other than clearly she was in the wrong, or she would not be some sort of spider demon monster now, and we wouldn't have confined a third of our race to the pits of the, Underdark, wherein all, it's predators all the way down, except for the mushroom men. Are the mushroom men predatory? What do they eat? Other mushrooms? Okay, and that's where we start. And I think Mordenkainen's sort of characterize is the whole race as in mourning or living in the past about this. And I think, even Wicked Fantasy or Burning Wheel made mourning or grief of this fact the absolute, defining trait of surface elves. And I dig that. I dig that. I think we have this scenario where elf society is stuck looking backwards, even the young ones. The young ones are maybe more optimistic. They go out looking for new magics to reopen the Fey lands, because that's another thing. It's like, this is apocalyptically bad, so it didn't just collapse the elf kingdoms, it collapsed the Fey kingdom, that now the Feywild is this dark, weird, mysterious place that not even, fairies like to live in, which is why they cluster on the material plane, close enough to home that they can get there for whatever power they need to feed on, but, dryads and, fauns and whatnot really like our side of things, and if you end up in the Feywild, whatever's over there will rip you apart for fun. That's where we're going to go with this. So this is an apocalyptically bad thing, and I think all those all those elder Fey, they're dead. They're straight up dead. That they are definitely, like, some half-life of divinity still exists, and that's what they worship. They worship the divinity, this cluster of leftover belief energy. So that's it. The elf pantheon consists of the divinity, which is what's left of their power, except for Puck. no one saw Puck's body. Everyone assumes Puck is alive. Like, elves don't talk about it, or elves don't talk about much of the facts of what happened there, but we're all pretty sure Puck is alive because it's like, no, can't keep him down. He's probably hiding as like a halfling god or something, or some sort of wandering around among mortals. And that's it. So Puck is definitely around. You can worship Puck. He gives you powers. I like the trickery domain now. I had a player show up with it for a one-shot, and it was fun. We'll get into clerics in some number of weeks. And yeah. So getting back to it is that you have young elves who are investigating new magic or old elf ruins or old elf artifacts for ways to restore things to what they were, and elder elves getting increasingly mopey about it. Like, the midlife crisis hits elves harder. 500 years and you're just like, nope, I give up on everything. I am going to stare off into the middle distance and play my lyre, mournfully singing to the praises of a society which once was. And it was totally awesome because we say so. And the Drow side of things is that they are eternally spiteful. Spiteful in all ways, all times, always. That they maintain that Loth was right to rebel, and if I'm going to put handles on it, I'll say she was right enough. There were enough reasons for it. There were enough reasons at the time, because this is it. If it's all backstory, then you don't need to put handles on it for the players. It's just, these are factual elements, and if it intersects with storyline at any point, then I have to put handles on it. So we'll say she was justified enough to rebel, and the punishment way outstripped it, probably because she's a demon spider now, and her followers live in the Underdark where everything is terrible. And they're not taking it well, even 10,000 years later, because I guess elves are not equipped for emotional maturity. That's what we're getting at, is that they don't necessarily... They still haven't gotten over their apocalypse. And do you get over an apocalypse? I guess not. Maybe I'm not, but being fair to them. Oh well, they're fictional, I don't have to be fair to them. I'm just going to throw my ideas at the wall, and my players can make of it what they will, and that'll be the game. I guess that's the backstory, but what is it in play other than, we have an excuse for young elves to be out and doing things, and old elves to not be doing things, and I think elves as a whole still act like their empires are still, their kingdoms are still standing, like they still try to claim sovereignty under, like, even if this has been human lands for 10,000 years, it's like, no, this is the territory of the kingdom of the Misty River, and I demand trial and trade and taxation under those rules. Like, elves still claim elf sovereignty, and they are more likely to be in places where the local kingdom respects their original treaties with elves in such a way that, some guy who gets pinched for, starting a drunken brawl in the crapsack city of crime can argue his way into elf court. Like, there's still elf court in human and gnome cities, or even gnome towns, and you just have to deal with this extra layer of bureaucracy whenever elves in the law are in place. And what else do I want to bring up? I think most elven kingdoms, because they're all small little kingdoms and they all answer to the High King, tend to have great reverence for anything that you could claim is ties to the Fae. So, like, there's a definite sort of mageocracy to their politics, where it's, oh, you're a sorcerer, that means you're flame-blooded, that means you're more qualified to be king than your cousins are, so that bumps you up the succession. And maybe there's even a hierarchy there where it's like, okay, this generation has a sorcerer, he gets to be king. There's a sorcerer in the royal family, so he gets to be king. And if that fails, it's like, well, this guy's a druid. And if that fails, it's like, well, this guy's a warlock to the Archfey. That's got to count for something. And failing that, it's like, the paladin that has an oath to the trees and he gets to be king. And another weird idea that drifted into my head because I've been brainstorming this episode for a while is that the High King of the Elves is a ghost. That he's a 10,000-year-old ghost, and he's maintained coherence and still has a sharp mind for legal precedent, so they let him be king, High King of all elves everywhere. And that's another element of living in the past, is that their king is dead and they won't let him stop ruling. And there's maybe a bit of feuding necromancy if the plot goes into this at all. There's feuding necromancy afoot between guys keeping the king's ghost stable and guys kind of trying to exorcise the king's ghost so someone else can rule. Or hell, maybe I do a reveal where, oh no, the king's ghost has been exorcised for 200 years, and it's just the counselors, you running around with high-grade illusion magic pretending there's a ghost there. What other things matter for elves? I think they have a higher tolerance for necromancy, but only in the sense of talking to ghosts. Like, they don't care about undead. It's weird that that necromancy kind of drifted under D&D, where it's like, well, it stopped being throwing bones at walls to see the future and talking to ghosts and became, undead stuff. And those two things, one feels more obviously evil than the other. Like necromancy comes with a lot of moral baggage that even evocation, which is outright destructive all the time, always doesn't get stuck with. The magic episode is also coming. What I think about magic when you're writing setting. And writing setting and writing setting for players about elves. What else do elves need to know? Character classes. They always say they're good at magic, but there's nothing in their stats that makes them good at magic. So I don't know if I want to make that easier or not. I don't know if I want to house rule any changes. I'm not big on house rules because they just get cumbersome and I have to remind people of them. I have to remind myself of them. So it's hard to parse for me. On the player side, something that even I get hung up on more so as a GM is that age gap issue where, oh, you're 112 and you're exactly as competent as a 17-year-old human. What does that mean about elves? And I think it's not that they spend 30 years in diapers or anything. Like, we're not just multiplying the human experience by 10. We're talking about a whole different scenario in which they're physically mature, 30-ish, but there's a long period of apprenticeship. There's like this weird extended adolescent phase where it's like, you've got all your bits and you've gone through puberty, but now you have to be a productive member of elf society before we let you leave. I don't know what that means. Is it like 80 years of community service? Do you have to spend 80 years tending the trees? Maybe that's it. Maybe that is it. Maybe there's just this second adolescent phase where you're stuck doing odd jobs forever until, I guess you have a career path now. Are elves better than you? I mean, they're going to say they're better. There are going to be ways in which they are better. But I don't necessarily want to be the guy that says, oh no, all elf craftsmanship is inherently better. I just think it's more ornate, or more ornate is probably the way to go about it. It's not strictly like, oh, elves are the only masterwork swords you can get. There's just a level of detail that you won't get out of anyone else because they've got the time to work on it, and there's not any pressure on this race to do faster or more because they've already ruined it. They're already ruined as far as they're concerned. It's that, I suppose I could bang out this shield in 2 days, but what am I defending? Kingdom's fallen. Why do anything? The difference between high elves and wood elves is fuzzy to me. I know it's supposed to. This is something that's going to have to matter to players, right? And do we say that the wood elves? And I mean, I don't just want to be like, okay, the high elves are the ones from Lord of the Rings, and the wood elves are the ones from The Hobbit. I want to say that each, as much as saying, oh yes, high elves are, have cities on that look like cities, and wood elves have cities built into trees, but because Rivendell is also built into trees and has a lot of tree motifs, and how do I make them feel different without making one of them Ewoks, I guess, is how I want to say this. And maybe the answer is maybe we make one of them nomads. We make wood elves nomads, that as much as that they are moving from spot to spot in their own forests and across the hills and dales and whatever, following routes that are as ancient as time, and they don't care for whatever borders have risen since then. And that'll be a bone of contention. That can be something that there's story in that it is the decade in which the wood elves of the rolling hills insist that they're allowed to move through the small bickering fiefdoms in full force for no reason other than that they've been doing it forever, and the borders between the small bickering fiefdoms get really antsy about all this because the treaties haven't been renegotiated in 10,000 years, well before the small bickering fiefdoms arose, and so but the elves don't see the need to negotiate with a human kingdom that hasn't been in existence for 10,000 years, so the old treaties still stand. This idea that things were better in the past, and we're going to stick to that is I think a good that's a good guidepost for anything I want to say about elves as things go. There's no elf cuisine has been the same for 10,000 years, and they get really violent when some population of something completely new or different ruins their supply of weird moonberries that do things. Yeah. So they get extra angry and go, wreck some farmers or something who are ruining, their traditional gathering spots. And the reason why there was a elf hegemony of small kingdoms over the whole land that was super high magic and is now fallen is that it's a great excuse to have weird dungeon-y crap over the landscape. Because I want there to be weird stuff just around. Not necessarily outright evil, although we'll get to that soon. We'll get to outright evil littering the landscape soon. But I like the idea that sometimes you find something old and it's just weird, and maybe it's more of a puzzle or like a Star Trek episode than a straight dungeon crawl. So throughout the landscape you'll have these old elf waystones. They're regal monoliths, and if you can read Elvish and touch it, it'll display the name of your location in Elvish, the day, the time, and the phase of the moon. And it's these are useful, and hell, if you know the names in Elvish of the other waystones, that it'll tell you how far it is to the next one or which direction it's in. So there's this not necessarily Elvish fluency among traders and travelers, but there is sort of a traveler's Elvish that these things are useful, and so people speak enough Elvish to get by on them. It even gives you the weather for 3 days. It is profoundly useful. And then maybe you introduce later on that, these are actually teleport markers, that if you have the right item, you can bounce between the waystones at will. Your video game fast travel system shows up if you're doing a lot of running around. And I want there to be old stuff littering the landscape, and it doesn't make any sense because it's all been forgotten because the elves don't talk about it anymore. They talk about how sad they are that it's gone, but they don't talk about what they've lost. And maybe they don't properly remember, and maybe that's a lingering effect of this apocalyptic thing that happened when all their gods died. Drow in the Underdark. What else do I want to say about Drow? I do want them to be uniformly evil. I don't want Drow to just be, you know, the BDSM doom cult that runs around. I mean, I want the Drow antagonists to be particularly vicious and spiteful. Like, they do, when they decide you're done, you're on their list, they come at you hard and they come at you in mean ways. But that's not necessarily true of all Drow, because I want to give people permission to play them, because the book gives you permission to play them now. You know, first level, no level adjustment, no talk to your GM bullshit in the sidebar the way they used to be. It's hey, you can be a Drow, and maybe you're nice about it, or maybe you're just not. Maybe you're just profit-driven in a way that makes you more pragmatic than your brethren, but you're not noble and virtuous, and here's your 2 scimitars and your panther eye. I'm really glad. I'm actually really proud of what streaming's done for bringing people into the hobby, because it means you have people coming into the hobby without the frame of reference of Forgotten Realms novels or Dragonlance novels, so they don't necessarily have the, oh, I want to be just like this guy. I mean, there's probably a bunch of people coming into the hobby that want to be just like the characters from the Adventure Zone instead, but the idea of rolling a Drow who is, yeah, I don't fit in with those guys, but not because I'm pure good, it's just I don't appreciate worshipping a demon cult, and I don't want to spend all my time living in the Underdark where it sucks. We're keeping the Underdark in this setting. We're keeping it. I want there to be a whole subcontinent that's hollow earthy, and I do want it to be a little more hollow earthy. I want it to be, you know, Conan Doyle and burrows and have crazy stuff living in there. It's not just caves and mushrooms. There are big open places that have full light somehow, and there are dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are in the monster manual, and we need reasons to have dinosaurs in the game, because dinosaurs make games better. So fuck it. Drow ride dinosaurs. That's another thing I'm gonna add. Drow get dinosaur mounts. Somehow. What else can I mine out of this? Is there anything I can mine out of this? I'm reading the book. This is a bad sign. Nah. I think there's probably going to be more coming out of this. If character classes seem particularly elfy, I'll revisit these ideas. But until then, go forth in the name of like, share, and also subscribe.